There were a couple people that I heard on podcasts talk about it that helped.
That's not just one person. There's multiple other leaders in this company that make that happen.
My coping mechanism was video games.
Understanding how to bridge the gap between what the customer thinks they want and what they probably need.
I do prefer looking for the people that...
And today we have a guest, Lucas Botkin.
Hey, if our goal is to get to $100 million, which was a goal that I brought up to the group.
Man, I love it.
Smaller business owners, people who are less political, you should be in the comment sections. Like, you should see what your fans are saying. You should also see what your critics are saying.
Welcome back to Diehard Entrepreneur Stories. I am your host, Devin Ramos, and today we have a guest whose journey from a garage startup to a multi-million-dollar business is nothing short of inspiring. He is a true diehard entrepreneur, a social media influencer with over 1 million followers. He is Lucas Botkin, the founder and CEO of T-Rex Arms, a leading manufacturer of firearms accessories and tactical gear. He started in 2013 with just $1,000 and an iPad Touch, leveraging social media to transform his brand into an industry powerhouse. Despite no formal military or law enforcement background, he built one of the most influential names in the firearms space through education, content creation, and digital marketing. Today, we'll talk about how Lucas went from being super lazy to developing an 80 an hour a week work ethic, how he handles internet fame, and his shift from being a wild entrepreneur to a business operator. Plus, we'll get an inside look at his upcoming ventures and consulting platform. Lucas, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yes, sir, dude. Thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to getting into everything you just explained. This will be good,
dude. Yeah, it's going to be great. Well, I'll hit you with a light one real quick because I know some of my audience is familiar with you. They've seen a lot of your content. I know you've done a lot of videos on T-Rex and its origin story and everything like that. But for our listeners, the pun. Can you just tell a quick story about the pun and where that came from?
Yeah. Oh, for the name? Yeah. So, yeah. Well, it's funny. You recognize it as a pun. About half the people don't actually get it. But
really? Okay.
No, so T-Rex Arms, you can hear that as a lot of different things. You can hear it as T-Rex that sells weapons. Cool. Small T-Rex Arms. That's kind of the pun. Or a lot of people just hear it as T-Rex Arms and they don't think anything of it. Which is funny, but it's like half and half. But no, I was having trouble figuring out a name for the company that I wanted to start. I was already, planning the business. I already had some of the material. I had some designs that I'd already made that I'd sold on eBay. But I wanted to make a company. I didn't want to just do a whole eBay store thing, because they also take 10%, and I didn't like that. So was trying to come up with a name and was really struggling for months. And then one morning at the breakfast table, I still lived at home. My younger brother was sitting there and I was rattling off names. And I was thinking like animal something. So like gorilla this, whatever it happened to be. And I just said T-Rex Arms, as a joke. And he was like, no, that's actually really good. And I was like, no, it's not serious enough. Like, I need something cool, like Cry Precision, or something, like I need something like high level. And the whole family was like, no, that's a great name. You should use that. And I was just like, all right, well, it's as good as any, I guess. And so that's the origin for the name. There wasn't some crazy, inspirational story of me on a beach watching, a seagull destroy something and being like, oh, nothing like that. But I'm actually struggling with names for the new businesses because naming things sucks. It really does. And I understand why brand agencies charge a lot of money for that. I totally get it.
Yeah, for sure. Do you feel like you got lucky with T-Rex Arms though?
Oh, yeah. Funny. Yeah, for sure.
You say it's not so much recognized as a pun. That's I can totally see that. But it's a little surprising to me because that was like one of the first things I picked up on. But it's probably because I saw your logo and everything, and I was like, T-Rex Arms.
Yeah,
that's funny,
yeah.
because arms, like armament, but like,
yeah. That's awesome. No, it's good. You're one of the 50% who got it.
Right on. So, Lucas, you had said when you started T-Rex Arms, I think you were 20 years old. Is that correct? 19, 20, somewhere around there. You say you're super lazy. Tell me about that. And what was the shift in motivation or transformation or whatever it was that just kind of like took you from being super lazy to, I'm going to take this big old endeavor on to build a company like this?
Yeah. So for some background, so I was homeschooled. So I spent my whole early life at home on the farm. And then when we moved to New Zealand when I was 5, lived there for 7 years, was on a farm doing, homeschooling stuff, math, hated math, but, spending a lot of time on the farm is what I was doing. And then when we moved back to the States, again, we had a farm. So I was the farm hand. I, milked the cow, took care of the chickens, chores, that was basically the extent of my work that I had. But then I goofed off for the rest of the time. And this is when I was, 16, 15, 17, which, a lot of teenagers, they goof off. But I played a lot of video games. There were TV shows that I would watch. I hated reading, so I wasn't studying anything. There were a couple things though. I was hyper focused on things that interested me. So at one point when I was 15, I wanted to write I was 17. I wanted to write a book on the year 1000, which I know sounds super homeschool of me, but it was just a fascinating time in history. You had a lot going on with the Danes, with the Normans conquering England. There was just a lot going on, and I thought it was interesting. So I had I went and bought 10 books and source documents, and I was getting into it. And I had written 80 pages of this book, piecing all this stuff together. And I have no idea where that is. It's on a laptop somewhere. But so I could hyper focus on a thing and make that my obsession. But when it came to work stuff, I didn't really have that. I didn't have projects. I didn't have a job. I was just kind of hanging around at home. And when I was 19, I started to kind of freak out because I was I don't have any job aspirations. I don't, I'm not going to college. There's no types of jobs that I want to do. I'm not joining the military. I don't know what I'm going to do. And meanwhile, my younger brother's becoming a web developer and he's getting some jobs here and there. And I'm what am I going to do? So I was interested in volunteer firefighting. So I joined the rescue squad. And then from there was hey, medical's cool. I like helping people. I'll start studying to be a paramedic. So I got the big paramedic book. It was actually, I think from Texas. A friend loaned it to me. So I started reading that a little bit. That was a little much for me, to be honest. And then one day I was I had watched the Magpul videos. I'm sure everyone who knows what I'm talking about. I'd watched those and I had some Kydex that one of my brothers had bought. And so I started making myself a mag carrier because I was starting to shoot a little bit with a 22 conversion bolt and a DPM SAR or something I had. And in the process of making that, and again, I was still being quite lazy. I'd work on that a little bit here and there, and then just goof off. But my mom or my dad was why don't you sell some stuff on eBay? Just make some stuff, just put it on eBay. And I was really? It's okay. So I made an eBay account, grabbed a camera, took some pictures, and the stuff sold. And then I was oh, maybe I could do this. So then I literally went from, after selling 6 items, it was literally only 6 items. I went to following every single holster company on Instagram and on social media, intense marketing research, kind of like I did writing this book. And I started studying the industry. And the main thing I was trying to do is find, and no one taught me this. This was all just I guess it's just logic, right? Where I was just it makes sense. I was looking for what are companies not doing that I can be better at. Because I had heard a guy at a conference when I was 18 say, you either need to be first to market with something or be better than everyone. So I kind of was focusing on the better than everyone. So I was looking for gaps, okay, they're not taking good photos. They have bad product descriptions. Their lead time's not very good. So I was taking notes on all this and designing what the company would be. And I worked on it for I want to say it was about 8 months of to sort of designing what the company would be. And the name was the last piece. Like I had the website. I knew which products I was going to offer. I did the very rough like napkin math of cost of goods and like how much money will I make per hour? I think it was like, I think I budgeted like $15 an hour, and it's
nice.
probably only like 9 to start with because it was a lot of time. But so I had the whole plan, got the name, launched, and I had already determined that Instagram was the best place. So I hit Instagram hard, and I got sales first week. Like with first week, I was getting like 1 and then none the next day, and then like 2 and then like 1, and like that's how it was like when I started. And so yeah, but as soon as I got a little taste of, hey, a customer wants to give me money, I now have to follow through and provide the service to that customer. It was a little addicting because that's all I did. I didn't play video games. I was on my phone constantly responding to customer service requests. I was working on the website, taking photos, thinking about Instagram. Like that's all I did for like 8 months. I don't think I even played a video game until like 8 months in of doing this. And then I was like, I want to play like something. And then I went back and played, some video game. But I was hyper obsessed for that 8 months. And then even more obsessed, later on as it got bigger.
So you sound a little bit obsessive. I love it, dude.
Yeah, a little bit. That may be one of my autistic tendencies. And but the nice thing was, one of the challenges, especially the first year, and anyone who started a business knows what I'm talking about. The first year is the hardest because usually you don't get a lot of traction. You don't get a lot of interest. There's not a lot of money. And I didn't make a lot of money. I put all my money back in. Like I wasn't making money at all. But my obsessive personality, I think, helped get through that first year and not get bored with it and, or whatever. But there was an element of perseverance too, where I knew like I just need to keep doing this. And the funny thing was I didn't have a lot of entrepreneur brain, like traditional maybe, or academic, where it's like first year's bad, second or third, it will start to get better. I was not even paying attention to the years. I was just like going and going and going, taking each week. Like, and the funny thing is I have a hard time remembering those early, like 4 years, like the pacing and the tempo of what was happening. Cause a lot of it was just grinding it out for time, and making holsters, which I wanted to jump off the roof many times because I'm not a guy that just wants to do the same thing for months. Like that's very hard for me, but I did it anyway. So the obsessive personality definitely helped. I still do it to this day, on different things. But I've also had to change my job 6 or 7 times. And part of that is on purpose so that I can do new things and it's interesting. Cause I'm not that person that just wants to do the same thing. That's not, there's people that do that. Big respect. Very cool. I'm just not that guy. I don't want to do something longer than like 1 or 2 years if I can help.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. And I mean that in the most respectful way. I think it's a good thing to be obsessive. Recently I've read it like 4 times now. Tim Grover's book, Winning, right? So Tim Grover is the, trainer for Michael Jordan, was the trainer for Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, an amazing individual. He wrote a book called Winning, and he talks about a lot of like patterns, a lot of things that he saw in, these like world's greatest athletes, right? I mean, one of them is like obsessiveness, like kind of what you just said, like almost in like an autistic sense. Like it's just insane how obsessive some of these people can be about certain things. And I think about it, and anything I've done really well in my life, I've always become obsessed. Like the moment I identified as an entrepreneur, now I'm like interviewing all these guests and like want to build all these businesses, have all these initiatives. And it's like all I think about all the time. I don't even care. But like, I also know in hindsight, sort of like, that's why I'm getting traction, because I'm just doing the same stuff like nonstop. And, anytime you get time into something, you're eventually going to get probably the desired result that you want eventually.
Well, and that's a point that I think a lot of young people these days need to hear is there's this whole trend right now, which I've seen up close and personal, but there's this trend right now where people want to work less, like a lot less, and make a lot more money, which, yeah, in a perfect world, that would be great. Like make 200K doing 20 hours a week. Like, yeah, that'd be awesome. But the reality is you are competing against everyone else. And if there's a guy or a gal that wants to work 50 hours a week and they're willing to make $80,000 doing that, you're not going to get paid 200K doing 20 hours of the same work. Like you are not. It's a free market, and you will be competing. And so I've seen this up close. And the funny thing is, I actually think if we really take a step back and look at history of work, a 40-hour work week is actually not realistic. And a lot of people aren't going to like me saying that. On your podcast, your listeners probably totally get it. But like in the old days, you would work from the time the sun rose to when it set, which is like a 12-hour workday times 6, maybe take one day off. Like that was the traditional work week, like before the 80s, before the 70s. This whole 40-hour work week thing it's not realistic unless you have a super inflated currency and like a crazy economic situation. So I really think young people, especially when they're young, need to acknowledge the fact that when you're young and you have energy and you can live off of 4 hours of sleep easier than maybe someone who's older, that's the time to crush at life, work 60 hours a week, maybe not 80, but we're talking 60, do 60 hours a week, do something productive on Saturday, take Sunday off, and put yourself in a good position by the time you're 30. And I see a lot of young people, and I think there's going to be a lot of regret here in a few years. They're trying to do 40 hours. They're going to get to 31, 35 and go, why haven't I gone anywhere in my life? And it's because, well, everyone else who's doing 60 and 70 hours are putting in almost double what you are. They're going to be twice as far along as you are in the same amount of time. So that's something that I've been trying to figure out solutions for, either in messaging to young people, because what I think what they get is they get they get the entrepreneur bro who's like 120 hours a week and you've got to over leverage every asset. And most people hear that and they're like, no, I'm not doing that. And then you have people on this side saying, hey, work 40 hours and you should get paid 200K and McDonald's burgers should be flipped for $20 an hour. But there's this place in the middle where it's like, hey, do 60 hours, do 45 at your job, study for 5, do a side hustle for 10, and do the basics, do the fundamentals for 10 years, and you'll be better off than the person just doing 40. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to hone in on, is that middle sort of, that balanced area where a lot more people can attain it than just like 1% super obsessive people. And people can just be in a better place by the time they're 30. Instead of, where a lot of people are right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's good. And you're absolutely right. You would know this firsthand, but like the power of social media and influencers can be crazy, can be insane. And it's easy to see somebody, faking the Ferraris and private jets and saying they're doing a certain thing, and it creates a disconnect. And then you got people over here, like us, that are doing it and are like, nah, dude, you've got to be smart. You've got to work smartly, but you also have to work really, really hard. And there's some things that it just takes time. Like you just need the reps, and the reps just take time. Like you've got to put in the work. So yeah, I appreciate that so much.
Yeah. I mean, it took us, I think it was 7 years to get our YouTube channel to 1 million, or 6 years.
Wow.
So, which is pretty fast, but it wasn't an overnight success like a lot of people think. Yep. Like a lot of people look at what I'm doing and where I'm at and they're like, oh, it must have been your dad. It's like, nope, he wasn't involved at all. They immediately jump to that. But then they're also like, oh, well, it must have just been given to you. And it's like, no. It's been 11 years of at the very bottom to where we are now. And we're not like crazy, but like pretty good, pretty decent. But it took 6 or 7 years to get the channel to 1 million. And I think a lot of people, they don't know, especially people that maybe find, how long did it take Joe Rogan to get to where he's at? Pretty sure he's been doing what he's been doing for like 20 years. So yeah, you've got to find something that provides value to people, and you have to have the discipline to stick with it for a long time, and it should pay off. It just may take 10 years, and that's okay. So.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm so glad that you brought that up because, when you think about it, 1 million, like 6 years, that's pretty quick, but that's also 6 years is also a pretty decent time to do anything. Like, how many people do you meet that have had any one job for 6 years? Especially in this market, is I interview younger and younger generations. There's a certain point where you don't have work experience, but there's also this sort of middle ground, like 30 to 40 years old. And like, nobody's really like long in doing anything. And it just kind of blows my mind. I mean, I even think about my military career. I'm like, yeah, 13 years is a decent time, but it's also kind of not, there were guys that had 30 years in. That's a real long time to do something. And that's why it showed in their skill level and their abilities and things like that. So.
That is a trend that I'm starting to see. We get a lot of resumes from young guys who have worked 5 jobs, but they're all like a year. And I'm just going to say it is tough looking at a resume like that because I know on the one hand, it could mean they're super hungry and they haven't found what inspires them to want to work 70 hours a week. And so they job hop. That is the best case, when I look at someone's resume. But the reality is most of the time it's someone who just can't cut it. And they get lazy or they get bored or they get fired even, and they just can't hold a job past about a year. And I don't want to say most of the resumes we get are like that, but the ones that I've seen in the last year from young guys in their like mid-20s and below, it's all like that. It's like 4 jobs that are a year long each. And they're not like a college job you do while you're in college, like something on the side while you're doing something. These are like jobs, like full-time. They don't have them for past a year, and maybe they're looking for the perfect job, but usually they're just not cut out to do the same thing every year and do it well. And it's sad. It's sad to see that.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Such good points you bring up. You mentioned Instagram. You said, I knew that Instagram was the place to go to sell. And I'm like thinking back, this is 2013, 14, 15, somewhere around there. I don't know that a lot of people were selling anything on Instagram at that time. So how did that, like, how did you make that connection? Because now people are, right? And like now people full out, it's like, we see how to use it as a marketing platform, how to run ads, like so on and so forth. It's evolved, but this is before all of that, where it was just like, you're posting static photos on Instagram to, I don't know, show your friends all the cool things you were doing, but you were thinking to leverage it to sell products. So if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I understood that I needed to show the product so people would obviously know about the product. And on Instagram at the time, you could post up to 15 seconds of video, which was nothing. It's very hard to do anything in 15 seconds. You could post photos, swear only. They didn't have portrait yet. But I knew, hey, this is a platform people are on. I can post the pictures that I'm taking of the product. I didn't actually start doing videos until about, I want to say it was like 8 months in, where I was just doing photos here and there. But I knew that if I could get people to be interested in the content I posted, they would end up going to our website. So that's how I marketed.
There you go. Okay.
And I only used Instagram for that. I wasn't on Facebook, I don't think, until like a year in. And even then I barely touched Facebook. I just didn't go there. Facebook was an extremely complicated app, even back in 2013. It still is to this day. Instagram, very simple, very straightforward. Only now it's a little more complicated. But yeah, I just posted, and I posted every day. Again, the basics, same thing every day. Post photos, comment on, respond to everyone's comments. We didn't even have direct messages then, I don't think. So it was all like on posts. Comment on other people's stuff, not be spammy. I'm not going to try to advertise on other people's stuff, but just try to be a wholesome, helpful guy. And that got us followers. And then it just slowly built from there. And it wasn't until I think 2 years in that I started the YouTube channel, or 3 years in even. So there was a lot of Instagram activity just hitting that platform, showing photos, cool gear, are really like, I don't want to say lame holsters back then, but by comparison to what we make now, like they were pretty, they're okay. They could be a lot better, but, and now they are. So, so I just identified Instagram as it's free. I don't have to pay money. I could throw stuff there. I use hashtags so people find it. People don't use hashtags anymore. And it worked. And I'm glad, because if I had chosen another platform like, say, Pinterest or Flickr or something like that back then, it wouldn't have worked. It did not provide a community aspect like Instagram did, and it paid off. And then a lot of other gun companies started using Instagram like 5 years later or more. And now it's kind of hard to get on there and start a gun company, but at the time it was the place to be. And I timed it just right. I was very fortunate to pick that app. And I probably could have done YouTube a little sooner, but it worked out. So
yeah.
Fun.
Yeah, I'd say it worked out for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. So I have this idea as you're talking about the early days here that you were kind of like one man, couple employee show here. At what point, and maybe this isn't the case, but if that is the case, at what point did it transition to bringing more people in charge of certain departments or certain functions, and you like really carving out a defined role and not so much wearing 30 different hats? Like, how fast did that transition really happen, or how slow?
Yeah. So I hired my first employee, I think 3 months in, a part-timer, and she helped with some of the holster production stuff. I think it was about a year in that I had a couple people, and one of them came to me and said, "Hey, if we're business partners, we can all work together, blah, blah, blah." And so I assessed that and was like, "Yeah, sure, let's do it." So he managed the finances, which I was doing, although my way of doing it was pretty fly by the seat of my pants. I had a PayPal account. Like, this is how it worked. All the orders came through the site, went into PayPal. When I needed money to buy stuff, I would just go to PayPal and go $4,000 to my bank account, buy raw material to make holsters. And so I have like all of these line items of just like PayPal payments of like $4,000, $3,000, like just to buy stuff. And I just had it sent over. So that's how I did the money. And then payroll, I can't even remember how I did payroll. It was, I think, through my account, but PayPal was just funneling the money over. So he came on, he was going to handle the accounting. I was like, cool, because I don't want to do that. And then the other guy who was also a partner who came on board then, he was going to run like the operations side of the holster manufacturing, because I was not a huge fan of having to manage that. What I wanted to do, and I didn't know this until later, one of the things that I'm really good at is focusing on customer value proposition. Now, I didn't know that I was doing this at the time, but I was so focused on what does the customer want? What does the customer need? What problems can we solve? What can we offer them? And what can we offer with our content, that I did put everything into that, to the detriment of certain things operationally. But I basically was like, yeah, you guys handle this. I'm just going to go and do this over here. And I didn't know exactly what I was doing at the time, but that's what I was doing. I was creating the reason people would want to shop at our company in the first place. And because I focused on that, and that's all I did, I believe that is a huge contributor to the success. So in the process of that, more people got hired because, more orders are coming in. So by 2019, we had 30 employees. So we were at like a dozen, I think, in like 2017. I have a hard time with some of the years before 2020. Because in 2019, what happened is we moved from this small little workshop that we had into a commercial park in town that had in a 10,000 square foot facility. So we went from like, I think 3,000 square feet with 20 people to, hey, now we have a 10,000 square foot building that's like nice. There's a parking lot, like, it's an actual workplace now. And that's kind of where I remember most stuff like starting, and changing. But I changed my role like 3 times, let's say, between 2013 to 2019. And just getting removed from holster manufacturing, focusing more on content, focusing more on YouTube, more on product design. I started designing nylon products in 2017, and then those started coming to market in 2018. We added a whole retail silo to our site, separate from holster manufacturing in 2018. That was a big project that I designed and was like, hey, we need to curate products because people don't know what to buy. We can provide a solution where we test and choose what's good and sell it ourselves. So we launched that in 2018. So we added that to our product portfolio, you could say. And so that was my job throughout this whole time. And meanwhile, the two other business partners were handling accounting, payroll, the operations side, hiring people to do manufacturing. And I was just so focused on, like laser focused on customer, product, design, offerings, website, customer service. Like that was all my thing. And even to this day, that kind of is still all my thing that I handle. Even today.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like that's a great call. When I think about it, just drawing from my experience and seeing how big your company is, I'm like, man, that's not just one person. There's multiple other leaders in this company that make that happen. And then to know, from what I see from my perspective, right, as a consumer, because I'm a consumer as well, I buy your products. That is like your sweet spot, man. I mean, you've created a movement. The education piece, you're very knowledgeable. Understanding how to bridge the gap between what the customer thinks they want and what they probably need. And like, man, you've just done such a good job there. So I can see how that's benefited you, like leaving you in that space and not trying to say, all right, Lucas, understand that you think a certain way, you obsess a certain way, but we need to teach you how to run operations and do finance. So go learn so that you can do that. Like that just would be so cost prohibitive and like a waste of time, honestly, right? I mean, it seems obvious to me, but maybe it's not obvious to other people. But just as an outsider looking in, like, I don't know, what would you say about that?
Not everyone in the company understands what I do, and that's fine. That's pretty common though. When you read about people like, Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or whoever, like the hard charger, obsessive people, like, usually people don't fully understand them. And usually a lot of those people say working for this person sucks because they don't understand how that person's driven, why they're driven that way. Like they don't get it. So like, and that was actually something that I stressed a lot over a couple of years ago was some of the employees' view of me, like, because they just didn't understand me. And I remember my executive coach that we had in the company, he was like, yeah, you shouldn't worry about that. Like, you're just one of these people that is going to be misunderstood. Like, yes, there's some things you shouldn't do, like to mitigate certain things. Like, don't rush past people and not say hi. Like don't do certain things that are just dumb. But like, you are the way you are. It's why you're good at what you do. And yeah, some people are not going to get that. Or you're going to be intimidating to people who only want to work 40 hours because you're working 80. And it's like, yeah, I'm not going to apologize for that. So that was kind of interesting a couple of years ago for that. But yeah, not everyone has understood what is best for the company that I focus on. So there has been pressure in the past for, hey, you really need to understand all this finance stuff. Hey, you really need to understand personnel management, like these certain things. And I went and studied. Like I was like, okay, fine, I'll learn it because I will go and teach myself anything. I just started trying to teach myself video game programming, which that's a nightmare. That's outside of learning another actual spoken language, that's probably the hardest thing I've tried to do is learn programming. But I will go teach myself anything. If I believe it's what will accomplish the mission, I could be hyper obsessive and at it because that's fun. So there have been times in the business from that 2020 to 2025 era where we turned into more of a corporation. In 2020, we went from 30 employees to 70. So now it's like, we need, HR and we need, we're past the 50% threshold. Now we have like health benefits and like other things that are introduced into the business that now we have to learn about. So there has been pressure to focus on some of the more corporate stuff, which is kind of what you mentioned at the beginning, going from entrepreneur to businessman. And I think some of my personal focus trying to be more of a businessman was not actually good for the business. I should have focused on being an entrepreneur so that we could maintain like startup sort of growth trajectory. We kind of leveled off a little bit since 2020. because a lot of people in the business started focusing more on process, systems, corporate, the business. And I'm trying to get back to, with some of the folks back to, no. We're still a small company. Like, really, we're not, Amazon or anything. Like, we need to be a fast moving startup who can make decisions quickly, who doesn't waste time on certain, admin stuff that's happening in the business. We take risks, obviously, risks that won't tank the company, but we're willing to take some risks, put up some money, and make some things happen. And so there's currently a lot of discussion on that right now. But I do think some of my trying to redirect my focus into being a traditional businessman was actually not good for the company. And I should have just kept being me, just focusing on customer and product and the market. And I'd say in 2022 and 2023, those were 2 years I kind of tried to be a businessman and less of an entrepreneur. And I've been getting back to that last year and this year. And that's been good. But it's a tough process to swap between the two, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, it's so good to hear that because much different level. My companies, even collectively, are not as big as yours. I can say that pretty good certainty. But I did the exact same thing, but at a much lower level. And I think I realized it probably quicker. But I probably realized it quicker because I seen the adverse effects so quickly. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, there's companies doing hundreds of millions of dollars that are still considered small. Like, I mean, especially when you look at like public companies, like you're so small. You're so small at $100 million, right? And so why, if it's okay for them to maintain this like entrepreneurial spirit and everything that you were just explaining right there, it's just a different mindset, different way of looking at things. It's okay for them. Like, why would it not be okay for us where we're at? And so, I had the same thing, like less emphasis, like on process, like, hey, maybe we don't have the most refined sales processes, but if that's what's allowing us to get the deals that we're getting right now, and that's kind of what we got, like, that's the most important thing. And like, we'll iron it out later down the line. And so similar to what it sounds like for you, I was kind of like, I had to pull back and be like, nah, man, I just got to let the team do what they're going to do. And I need to focus on doing what I need to do. And it'll iron itself out.
So a practical that I've seen happen, even in our own business and with others, is when you get to a size where you get access to reports, like historical data, this is a trap that is you are either going to fall right into on the punji sticks, or you're going to see it and kind of, assess it and handle it. But what happens is a lot of teams and people can become hyper obsessive to some extent on what the numbers say. And the numbers do tell a story. It is true. But what I've seen is that distracts from, again, focusing on customer value proposition and what do employees need. And those are of the fundamentals of business. Like all my 11 years of doing this, if I had to chalk up like the fundamentals of running a business, it really comes down to two things. Just like fundamentals of shooting. It's you're going to focus on the customer or you're going to focus on the employee.
Yeah.
And you should do both.
That's good.
If you don't focus on the employees, then you're not going to be able to provide the service that the customers are paying you for. And if you don't focus on the customer, you have no reason to hire the employees and keep them on. So all business decisions, even right now, we're trying to work through this a little bit, is if it is not directly, not indirectly, directly tied to the customer, providing some value to them, or on the employee, providing value to the employee, we shouldn't even talk about it. It's a waste of time. Like certain admin things. And you can argue that every decision in a business is directly affecting sales or employee, but it's like, no. Directly, does it directly correlate to what is actually going on in the business? And I wish I had known that sooner, because I've had to go through years of meetings and stuff to kind of see the difference between meetings that are run like that and meetings where we just talk about whatever's going on in the business at that given week. But those really are the two business fundamentals. If you can just focus on those two things and make every decision, literally, if it doesn't pass the sniff test for one of those two things, it's a waste of time. You're probably over processing something. You're probably focused on some weird admin thing, or, maybe it's a legal thing that actually doesn't really matter, or you should just get, a lawyer to look at it for you so you can get back to focusing on the customer or the employee. And the problem is when you get a little bigger, 10 million, 20 million, 90 employees or whatever, there's a lot of data and reports you have access to that you can then sit there and sift through and be like, oh, well, this product's down from 2 years ago. And meanwhile, if you have good marketing guys, they could be like, yeah, we know why that's product down. It's because these two companies launched products that are similar. We haven't updated ours in a while. Like, I don't need a report to tell you that. So the practical advice I have for people is, if you're in a business that's like medium size, use reports to make decisions. That's what reports are for. Do not obsess over reports and looking at numbers unless it's something you specifically need to make a certain decision. Otherwise, it's a waste of time. It really is a waste of time. And I've seen it up close and personal when reports are dived into and talked about for hours. And I'm just sitting here like, this isn't going to help us make a decision on a product, an employee, a customer, a silo. Like, we're just going over historical data for historical data's sake. That's like what we're doing.
Yeah.
So,
oh man. Especially when you get I'm a very analytical person. So especially when you get like the, guys like me that are really good at that stuff, because we can just nerd out. But like with all things, temperance, I'm a big believer in temperance in all things, man. Yep. Man, that's such good stuff. I feel like you're speaking directly to me right now.
Oh, good.
Lucas, as you think about, you've had these different bouts of growth as you've talked about the company over the years. When you're thinking back, what specific investments in I don't know, key people, technology, or certain infrastructure have really, moved the needle the most for you? Looking back in hindsight.
I would say a big one was content creators is a big one. 2 years ago, we brought on a guy, Brandon. He's in a bunch of our content now. He was initially on the customer service team, learned a lot about our customers, over like 3 or 4 months doing that, which was by design. And then he went into the T&E department. They helped us choose a lot of products. This was, I think, 3 years ago. And then he transitioned from that into, hey, you're going to be a public face for the company. You're going to test product. You're going to represent us, et cetera, et cetera. That's a very key hire and also an extremely scary one, because now you have someone representing your thing. And it's why a lot of companies don't do brand reps internally. It's very messy when one of them leaves or if they say something dumb, but it's a high risk, high reward type of hire. Like, you get the right guy or gal, you're going to win. You get someone who's not right, well, you're going to pay for it somehow. And then I've got fun tips for that as well. But he's done great. And then we brought on another guy. Those were key hires at freeing me up to do certain things, because now I don't have to do content 4 days a week. Like, they're currently at the range right now filming, and I'm talking to you, and I'm going to work remote today. So they're doing filming while I'm doing this. People is an interesting one, because there's kind of some people who believe that hiring people is an investment. And then there's other people, usually on the finance side, who see hiring people as just ballooning the payroll. And I'm actually more in the middle. Hiring the right people is absolutely an investment in the company's future if they're the right person. And that's what's hard to suss out. And I'm still learning that whole process. I haven't hired a ton of people. That's usually been a lot of the other people in the company. But I do prefer looking for the people that, well, again, comes down to the business fundamentals. They're either going to be hyper obsessive over the employee and taking care of the employee, or on the customer. Now, both is cool. If you get someone who's interested in both, and we have one guy in particular at work who's very obsessed with both, but usually people fall into one or two camps. Like, they're focused on the customer, they're focused on the employee culture situation in the business. So that's really what I look for right now. Technology stuff. I mean, we have our own software team. That's big. Mm-hmm. We have a cobbled together ERP that we've been working on our own. That's a weird what do they call it? They call it like barnacles. We have a WordPress WooCommerce site that they then modified greatly with their own backend custom solution, which can interact directly with our Haas machines and interact directly with our shipping for our retail products. Like, it's pretty sophisticated and very cool. But that's a lot of money. We have 4 software devs. They are paid a lot of money. Software is something you're going to pay for. But that has allowed the company to update a lot of its front end and back end systems to make the company run smoothly.
Right.
I would say that probably was an investment, although at the time we didn't view it as that. We viewed it as just cost of doing business. But if you're a company that's doing inventory, maybe you're doing manufacturing as well, there are off-the-shelf ERP solutions, but it may be hard to find one that does exactly what you want. And you may just have to pony up the $500,000 a year in software devs to make whatever you want. It was actually kind of funny because we had a guy from Oracle come out to talk to us about some things. And when he heard we were making an ERP, he was like, "Oh, good luck. We spent $1 billion on ours." And I was like, "Thanks, man." But he put things into perspective for everyone. Like, hey, y'all are doing your own. It's really cool. Just know we put $1 billion into ours, and you guys, like, good luck. It's pretty good right now. But so it just kind of helped with perspective, balancing it. So it's like, all right, and expectations. But investments. So we've been a debt-free company. This is both good and I'm going to say it's both good and bad. It's good in that we have been very safe through economic troubles, like in 2020. We actually put aside money to pay for all the employees' salaries for, I think it was a month, 3 weeks, twice. We assumed we'd have 2 shutdowns. So we made sure we had enough cash to cover everyone's payroll for those like 3 weeks that we'd be shut down, and then 3 weeks again when we would be shut down. So because you're debt free and we didn't have all these outstanding liabilities, that was something that was very easy for us to set aside and have. The downside is whenever we've wanted to invest in a big opportunity, like say updating the range or buying another range, when you start talking about a couple $1 million, it's like, yeah, going and dropping $400K and then paying the bank a little bit of money every month would allow us to do it right now instead of waiting till we have $2 million cash to pay. There's definitely, I'm torn because I like the debt-free stuff, but I also see the value in strategic, using the bank or an investor strategically to buy time. Now, again, strategically, because I'm not someone to over leverage everything. Like even when we went and bought our whole real estate portfolio, when I got married, my wife went and did that. We could have bought a lot more houses than we bought if we wanted to play like the razor's edge and then say like, oh, we have $5 million under management or whatever. We could have done that, but we were like, no. We'll buy enough houses that we can make return. But if we lost it all tomorrow, we'd be fine. Like, so we that's how we play things. So T-Rex is debt free. That's cool. But it has meant that certain investments, like say buying another company or buying another range, have just been kind of not an option because that requires many millions of dollars on top of the operating cash that you need to run the business. And so we're just doing more of a slow growth trajectory, building cash flow, as the company grows, converting it into assets, materials and stuff. So that's been interesting. But no big, massive moves of money at the company besides buying buildings for our, operations.
Right. Yeah. And I'm a real estate investor, so I'm all for that. Cause similar to you, I'm fairly conservative. But when it comes to real estate, I just view the risk a little differently because we're talking a hard asset, and I'm also bullish on real estate. Plus, I hedge my skill, right? I put a lot of time into building a skill to have an understanding to hedge some of the risk, right? So that's really cool. I love it. So, man, as the company's experienced those ups and downs, like you brought up a little bit of COVID, what's that been like for you personally, like internally? You've grown. This is over a period of 11 years. So I know you've personally, and like your own personal self-development, I'm sure has grown a ton over that time. What has it been like as you're, the face of the company at 20 years old, and now I think you're 30, 31, somewhere around there, 31, still the face of the company, but a much larger company, much larger responsibility. Man, what have been some of your like real personal struggles you can recall?
Probably the first one was dealing with the internet fame, which I got pretty early on. I want to say it was like 2018 is when things really amped up and blew up. YouTube's, going crazy. And as far as content creators back then, I was the only person who was running and gunning, showing a high level of shooting, a lot to the point people thought it was sped up. Yeah. All the other YouTubers at the time, I'm sure there's one or two who'll try to say it's not true, but a lot of it was shooting from benches or unboxings and stuff like that. It was just very different. Meanwhile, we're filming 24 frames a second. We're color grading. We're adding cool music. We're to the point that the Taliban rips off our videos. Same color grade, same music, same everything. So 2018 was big. I got a lot of criticism, some warranted, back then because, I have no military LE background. I'm skinny. I'm young. I don't have a bunch of tattoos, but people could see I was doing all right. Like I was successful. I had a ton of cool guns. I was making money. They didn't know how much. I actually don't know how much money I was making back then. It was okay. It wasn't like tons. That happened later, but people could see I had some stuff that they didn't have, and they didn't like that. And so there was a lot of that going on. And it took me about 3 years. I think it wasn't until about 2021 that I finally learned how to compartmentalize online criticism from like daily operations. Because what would happen is I would see a big spat would be happening. And any content creator knows what I'm talking about. Like you'll inevitably say something that's taken out of context.
Catches fire.
Exactly, yeah. Or you'll say something dumb or something like that. And the internet for about a week, 2 at the max, will just dive in and focus on that. And it is hard to step away knowing that is happening like real time. There are people talking about me, questioning my work, disparaging everything I've done for the last 5 years while you're trying to sit there and like edit a video, design a product or something. Like it is extremely challenging for anyone to take that and not think about it. My coping mechanism was video games, like for real. In 2018, 2019, I would play PUBG just to get away from it all. And I'd be like in Discord with the boys, although sometimes they would bring up the stuff and then we would talk about it. Anyway, but like I would try to get away from it. But it wasn't until about 2021, there were a couple people that I heard on podcasts talk about it that helped. One was Jordan Peterson saying, I block anyone who's anonymous. And I was like, yeah, that's actually pretty reasonable. Like if they're not willing to put a face and a name to what they're saying, I really don't have to respect what they have to say. If they want to message me, in an email, privately, even if they are anonymous, that's kind of a different story. There were a couple other podcasters talking about like comments, like not reading comments. I actually think that's kind of a weak strategy. Like it's the easy way out. Like, hey, I just never read the comment section. The problem with that is, you learn so much about your customer or your fans reading the comments that it's worth the risk of seeing some stuff you don't want to see, getting your feelings hurt. Like, cause you'll have 10% that's like that. You'll have 90% that's pretty decent. So the whole strategy of never reading comments, I think is not the best course of action if you really want to be good at knowing what your fan base is about. And I remember when I went and did my interview with Tucker Carlson, he kind of mentioned that. He's like, yep, I don't even check the internet. I just go home. Yeah. Which for him, he's probably in a different, sure. He probably shouldn't read the comments. But most other people, smaller business owners, people who are less political, you should be in the comment sections. Like you should see what your fans are saying. You should also see what your critics are saying. And then do a quick assessment. Is this valid? Is this not? I've seen a lot of valid criticism about my shooting, or about like competitions or our products that I'm like, yeah, that's good criticism. I need to work on fixing that. And I think too many people, who can't handle it personally, just go, well, that's an attack, and they shove it over here. They don't want to think about it. So it was about 2021 that I learned how to really compartmentalize that and be like, if they're not a customer, I have no obligation to them. If they're not a fan who really wants to engage, I also have no obligation to them. They're just one in a few million who are going to be upset. And I've actually been able to do take some phone calls from other content creators about this because they are struggling with it. Because this is like the thing about the internet that I think a lot of people don't understand is this is a new phenomenon that we're all living through, where you have access to criticism literally at all times. Like if you think back, and I want to write a paper on this, but if you think back to like TV stars and Hollywood stars back in say the 70s, the 80s, 90s, like the only way you could find criticism was in tabloids. And so you would only see those if you went to the grocery store and you're looking over there and it's got all these like paparazzi photos. But nowadays, the average person who has 1,000 followers, small little company or whatever, can get on their phone and see messages from lame people saying like, you suck, like, no, you weren't in the military, oh, whatever. Like everyone has access to that now, and most people don't know how to handle it. And it's new, and there's not a lot of people talking about it. I hate using the word mental health, but because it's been so like bastardized, but it is a mental health issue that people don't know how to handle anonymous online criticism that is there 24/7 once they reach like a certain level of popularity or fame or notoriety or whatever you want to call it. And I'm hoping I can help more people with that, as they're struggling with it. And therapy can be good as well, although most therapists don't know exactly how to navigate that either. It's something I've talked to my psychologist about. And he's asked me a lot of questions about like trying to figure out how it works. Like when you have, an online presence like this, how does it make you feel late at night when this thing's happening? And so that's been interesting talking to him. But that was probably the hardest thing for me because that was around every corner. I'll say the thing that was very helpful was I got married in 2021, and my wife, then I had a supporter like 24/7, like all the time, which is great. She helped me grow a lot in EQ, so people smarts. Okay. I have not always had a whole lot of that, or I didn't know what I needed to develop for that. Oh, so sure. She helped a lot with that, which was great. That I then was able to take back to the business, and I was able to take to the internet. If I hadn't gotten married then, or gotten married to her, I would probably still be the same Lucas Botkin, closely to the Lucas Botkin of like 2021. But I'm very different now than I used to be. Thank goodness. Thanks to her. And so that was big. I can't say enough good things about that. But probably, the biggest challenge was just the internet fame, how to handle that, how it affects people at work. There's been a few instances where I've done or said something online that then an employee's upset about. And it's like, well, sorry, but you do work here and I'm the guy. So like, we're just not going to agree. Like you may have to quit if you can't handle this or whatever. So, and that happens with like these big businesses like, Tesla and Elon Musk, like they'll blast the thing. Bezos is dealing with this right now with the Washington Post. And people aren't going to agree and they may quit. And that's part of the business when you have a public figure representing your company who is saying certain things. Some of your staff may not like it a whole lot. And then you have to deal with that and fix it as best as you can. So that's been fun as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure. I mean, so on that note, as you've grown, how has it been trying to maintain that like creative control? Because, you are the face of the company, you started the company. But like, how do you maintain that creative control while you're also balancing like the growth of the business, right? Because all new things also evolve. So, yep. Perspectives change, right? You're growing individually, you're growing personally. What has that been like?
That has been tough. And that's one of the things that I have not transferred over super well. I would say I'm still very involved in the look and feel for the company and the content. There are some great people who've taken pieces of it and made it better. Like some of the writing and how we interact on our content on our website and stuff. Like they took some principles that I had sort of been using for years and they took it up a notch, which was cool. That's happened in media a little bit as well. But like one example of creative control being like a little separate is my older brother Isaac has a channel, T-Rex Labs. And when we created that offshoot, I was kind of like, well, hey, you have your own look and style that's a little different than ours, but that's okay. Like you can have that on your channel. Like it doesn't have to be, same music as ours, same everything. Like it still needs to have high production value, but it could be a little different. And we've kind of toyed with that where, we'll interact with people differently on Twitter, then say Instagram, then say YouTube, and then each content creator is kind of different. And so it's still a juggling act trying to figure out like, when are we too off brand, like too wild where people are like, what the heck is this? Like if we did a video that's black and white or something, would people be like, what the heck is this? So I'm still trying to figure that part out, but it's been tough to like transfer some of that over. And a lot of the time, and this is, I probably need to figure it out. It is hard for me to put into words. I'm sure other creatives will know what I'm talking about. It is hard to put into words what I envision and visualize as far as like an artistic thing where I'm like, I want this to be green for these reasons. And the music needs to do this at this pace. Like it's sometimes hard to paint that for people. It's just easier to sit there and be like, no, tweak this. Okay, that's good. That's what I'm thinking in my head. And then I like leave. And that's not good long term. Like I'm not going to be able to do that. When we have 10 media guys, we have 6 right now or 7. Like it's just not going to work long term. So over the next year or two, I am going to have to figure out like, how can I pass off like, this is the vibe and the look, be willing for it to change plus or minus 5 or 10%, out of these brackets, and then be good with it. So ask me in a year or two and I'll have a better answer.
Yeah, we'll have you back on. We'll check in for an update and figure that out. Yeah, no, but that makes total sense, especially, at your level, at your scale where you're at right now. Yeah, man, that's interesting to hear for sure. Yeah. What about some of the external challenges that you've seen? You actually gave us one earlier when you hit that 50 employee threshold and like compliance and things like that. Like thinking back, what have been some of the, real external challenges that are notable for you looking back in hindsight?
A lot of it has to do with the market. There were certain things that we could have done a better job of predicting with employees, like payroll. Like for a long time, we didn't know if the pay that we were doing was like over or under, depending on, because we're also a weird company. We've got manufacturing, we've got shipping, we've got receiving, we've got retail, we've got media, we've got brand reps, which who knows what brand reps should be paid. I've gotten comps from like $100,000 up to $1+ million. So it's like, how do you pay a brand rep who's responsible for millions of dollars of sales, although you can't prove it easily? Like it's very difficult. So over the last year or two, we've been trying to hone in on that and adjusting people, some folks that were underpaid and whatnot. And then also trying to be like, well, are we doing it off of our county, which is a small county, or are we doing it off of Nashville because we want to attract like people who are willing to drive an hour? And
right, yeah.
So they have to like talk about that. And that's where some of the business philosophy of myself and some of my business partners differs in how we, approach issues like that. I won't get into that too much, but that's been a fun conversation. But that was a pretty big one that I wish we had tried to tackle back in 2020 of like, hey, we're now at 70 employees. We're a little bit bigger. Let's actually create a roadmap for careers and positions. We think the company is going to keep growing because at the time we did, and it has been, but we thought like it would keep doing this. It leveled off a little bit. But like, so we should predict, like we should be like, hey, if our goal is to get to $100 million, which was a goal that I brought up to the group and everyone was like, okay, cool. So $100 million, that means, we're going to have 300 employees. So we need to start getting ready now. I wish we had focused a little bit more on what that would look like for the staff. So that would be my caution to anyone who does have a growing business. Like if you haven't figured out your payroll windows, your benefits, what kind of benefits you even want to do, what fits with your culture, do it early. Like even if you can't action at all, like you want to do full dental for everyone. Well, that's a lot of money and you may not be able to afford that for everyone when you're still a $20 million company. Especially if you have 60 employees or whatever. So, but put it on the list of I want full dental in the future. You can get some comps on what that will cost and then have a timeline of when you can hit that. Like, hey, we have 150 employees. We have enough money coming in. We still have a profit margin of 16%. We can now offer full dental to everyone or something like that as one example. So we didn't hash that out as much as we should have. I wish we had. Now we are. In my new businesses, that will get hashed out immediately on the front end. Will be what environment do we want for employees? What kind of employees do we want? What are the benefits going to be right out of the gate? And then what are some we'll add later once cash flow is good? I'm going to bake all that into the business plan at the beginning, just because I think that will be more effective. External challenges, we haven't had a lot with regulatory agencies, which has been good. The ATF inspects us, check all of our guns, and we've been good to go there. We actually had an agent this last time, who's a fifth group guy, former guy, who was a fan. So that was kind of fun. And so that was kind of hilarious. He was a fun guy. He had actually been at one of the classes that I was at long time ago, back with the Cephalic committee. He was like, "Oh, you came out one day while I was going through that." I was like, "Oh, that's
neat.
It's a small world." Yeah.
For sure.
So he's an ATF agent now. It's all right. Interesting. But no, not a whole lot of regulatory stuff. We've been threatened with lawsuits a couple times in our industry, and often what it is, each time it's been someone saying, "I have a patent on this thing. Your new product infringes." And I go, "Send me the patent." And they say, "No, we won't." And then I go, "Well, I guess you don't have one." And sure enough, they don't. So they're trying to get licensing. They're hoping to scare us into just paying them.
Scam you into licensing.
The first guy, that's what he said. He said, "Hey, you infringed on our patent, but we'd be willing to talk about licensing." And then after 3 emails, admitted they didn't have a patent. And I'm like,
"Oh, geez.
Come on, dude." So that happens in our industry a lot, especially on the nylon side. There's not really patents for nylon, even though everyone likes to think there are. There's not. So my recommendation there for people is get a lawyer. In fact, that's my advice. Lawyers are your friend. If you're a business owner, they're your friend. I can understand if you're not a business owner, why you won't like lawyers. I get it. If you're a business owner, you should have a good attorney that you can consult with, run a shareholder agreement past, a dealer agreement, a patent. I didn't have my own attorneys until 2021. When I got married, my wife was big into hiring professionals and whatnot. So she got us an employment attorney. We have an estate attorney. We've got a corporate attorney. I've got, I think there's another one. I can't remember, but access to all these people. And I'm not paying them money except for when we need them, but I got them at the ready if I need to ask a question or send them a document. And some of them are expensive. One of them's $1,000 an hour. And that's pricey, especially when he gets his whole team together. But he's saved my butt a couple times. So it's totally worth it. And I wish I had gotten my own lawyers back in 2017, 2018 for stuff. It would have been minimal, but it would have been great because they are someone who will have your back, in whatever situation, that you put them in, with what's going on. There's some legal obligation for them to have your back, and they're also a client that you're paying. So lawyers are your friend. You should have them if you're a business owner. But yeah, no massive, we had to sue a company ourselves. That was fun, but we haven't had a bunch of crazy litigation from other people, and that's been good.
Yeah, for sure. What about on the content creation side? Any issues there? I don't know. Fake accounts. I don't know. What's the biggest? What's the biggest threat to content creator?
The biggest threat is shadow banning. for anyone.
Oh, yep. Yeah. That's a big one. We haven't even brought that up yet.
I know,
Jeez.
yeah. And it's not just for gun people.
Yeah.
I saw a Twitter post that a Twitch streamer was getting shadow banned by Twitch, and she's not even like political. I mean, you could argue she's a prostitute, and that's probably why they shadow banned her. But so like non-gun people are getting shadow banned too. Like this is a thing that happens. So our company, we did fine until about 2020 is when things got wild with social media and the election and COVID, that a ton of censorship happened to all the gun channels starting in 2020. And it hit our company pretty hard. Like Instagram kind of tanked. YouTube also kind of tanked, although it tanked more in 2022 or 2023, I should say. But our new channels are doing quite well. Our main channel's kind of like in a weird spot where we're trying to talk to people at Google and YouTube to be like, what the heck's going on? Like, it's pretty obvious that we were fine and then we dropped like in 2023. So that's kind of annoying. What's nice though is like this new company I'm looking at starting has nothing to do with guns. So we'll have the freedom to market and pay for ads and do all the stuff that social media provides. The gun space and the political space are just two industries where social media marketing is just going to be very tough, at least for the foreseeable future. It's rumored that it's going to get fixed. That Instagram, Meta is going to work on their stuff. Sounds like YouTube is less interested. So it's possible some things will get better for the firearms industry here in the next year or two, but other industries should be fine. Like non-gun, non-political people should be okay. Video game studio, you're fine. This other company that I want to start should be fine. But it is scary because with so much business being done through e-commerce, the two things that can shut you down are nobody can find your company through Google. Google blacklists you, which is like the worst. And that doesn't really happen. That's like cataclysmic. Like that's the apocalypse. You can't even Google your own website. But it's being blacklisted from social media or on the internet, and then your credit card processor frying you, which we I think we sort of had a few years ago, but we had a backup and now we have another backup. So now we're like good, but credit card processing is one. And PayPal banned us a few years back, and they had like, I want to say they had like 80K of our money or something. It wasn't a lot of money, but that's enough to do some stuff. So like it took us months to get the money back because PayPal loves saying it's their money or whatever. And collecting interest on it, I guess. But yeah, those are the two things that'll nuke you is credit card processing, getting money somehow, and people finding you somehow. If you're an e-commerce business and being a firearms company, like we are on the hook for both at all times. And that can be stressful. We've had a lot of meetings. I think the first one I called it an apocalypse meeting, I think, where we were kind of planning out like worst case is Google blacklists us. We can't receive orders. What do we do? We get shadow banned on like one social media, and then we kind of like played out the scenarios accordingly. And I recommend people do that. Like if you're in this market or you're in politics, or any company for that matter, you should have an apocalypse meeting and be like, worst case, what happens? Our web dev dude leaves, takes all the passwords with him, and we're locked out of our site for a few weeks. Like we can't get money, we get scammed, ransomware, like whatever, and start wargaming like what you will do so that when it happens, you're less freaked out. You can actually make a decision faster. Like wargaming is like, that's what me and my wife do every night. Like for a couple hours, we're talking about problems that could happen and how to fix them. And so we're doing that all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. I could totally see how that benefits. Man, such good stuff. So Lucas, looking back at your growth and from where you were when you started with your iPad Touch in the garage to where you are now, there's been a lot of success. Mm-hmm. But as you think about it through your lens, what are some of like the notable victories that you've had along the way that you look at and you're like, yeah, man, that was like a notable one that sticks out to me?
I mean, I think the first one is I think I played and T-Rex played a big part in changing gun culture as a whole.
Yeah.
And while we didn't do it all on our own, we brought a lot of people along the way. A lot of other content creators, a lot of other companies even. And that has always been something I've stressed in our annual dinners with the staff is like, hey, this thing just happened where this company told us this thing, where now 2/3 of their customers are civilians instead of 2/3 being the military. Yeah. And they attribute a lot of it to us. Like this thing over here, this thing over here. And so there's a lot of ideological victories for me personally that have happened in the industry. And now it's in a pretty good place. And it'll be interesting to see whether it's me, continuing to do it or someone else, like who carries on like the next evolution of gun ownership and firearms responsibility and competency. I'm looking forward to that because I probably won't do gun content. I mean, I won't do gun content forever. I mean, I want to do this business channel next, but it'll be cool to see who picks up the torch, whether it's people at T-Rex continuing or whether it's a bunch of new people. That's probably been the most notable victory. I have personal victories for myself in handling, big personnel issues, learning how to be vulnerable with the staff, which is not something I did early on. There are a lot of things that have been great for me that I now could take to the new businesses that I would not have had. Like if I had tried to start a new company 4 years ago, it would just look very different than a company that I'll start like this year. I just know so much more the last 4 years of being married. Wow. Some of the work challenges that we've had, some of the personnel challenges that we've had, the company being a little more corporate and seeing the pluses and minuses of that, because there have absolutely been both. And assessing those, I don't want to say assessing those properly, but not taking them for granted has been a victory of mine. When a bad thing happens, I'm usually thankful for it. I've even prayed in meetings at work about like, hey, give us challenges that we have to fix. And some staff are like,
what are you doing?
I'm like, absolutely. Like, that's how we get better. I mean, I don't shoot targets on the range to get all alphas. That means I'm not getting better. Like, I got to get some Charlies and Deltas in there, So, a victory for me is when challenges happen, I don't flee from them. I don't run away and like, oh, woe is me, none of that crap. It's like, good, a problem. I'm going to go home. I'm going to talk to my wife for 4 hours about it. And then I'm going to get into work and we're going to solve this thing. And I was not wired quite that way 4 years ago, 5 years ago, even. I hated confrontation. I hated jumping in, headfirst into certain kinds of issues. But now pretty much any issue, personnel, leadership, product, PR, company issues, bring it. They're all interesting and unique and fun. And I'll learn more about myself and about that particular thing so that I can take that and help other people with it in the future. I actually, whenever there's a lull in the business where nothing bad's happening, I get really antsy because I want some problem or schism or something to happen to solve. I guess you could say I'm like a border collie that way. Like I have to have like a problem to like hone in on. Developing in that has been a victory for me because I've hated confrontation growing up. I like certain, hard things and being obsessive over them, but a lot of the personnel, confrontation stuff and conflict, has been something I've always hated. But in the last few years, I've learned to, I don't want to say enjoy, but I've learned to tolerate and, jump into and try to solve to the best of my ability. And that's big because changing your wiring, if you're someone who's not aggressive, you don't like confrontation, you don't like fear of rejection, whatever. The second you conquer one of those things, like that's huge. That's a massive, I hate the whole, you conquered your own demons or whatever, bull crap. But that is kind of what's happening. Like you just saw a pretty big plateau, like holding back human performance that now you can go to the next level and,
for sure.
and hit the next one. Maybe the next one is you fear, complacency or something. And now you have to solve that one and deal with that. So those are just a few of my personal victories. You'll notice that money is not one of them. I've made some money. Money was never my goal. It still isn't my goal. I've found that it's not always this way, but when money is your objective, I feel like it distracts people from doing the fundamentals and the basics, and they will ultimately just make less money. When you focus on the customer and you focus on taking care of your employees and you have something really compelling, the money will happen. And you'll probably fall into money and be like, what do I do with this? Which is what happened to me. And then I got married, and I married the right girl who took it and went and bought a bunch of houses and invested. And I was literally sitting on money doing nothing with it. I didn't have it in money market accounts. I wasn't investing it. I didn't have stocks, nothing. I just had pile of cash that I was buying like guns and ammo with, and educating myself and buying educational stuff, trips, things like that. But no, I wasn't buying fancy cars. I wasn't buying like jets or anything, not that there's anything wrong with that, but I just, money's never been the goal, which is kind of weird. Like making $1 million was never a goal of mine, or 10 million or 100 million or whatever. It's all the other stuff. And I believe the money will happen if your goals are set up properly.
Yeah, for sure, man. Very nicely said. I completely agree. Mm-hmm. Lucas, if you were talking to Lucas at 21 years old, getting ready to start a YouTube channel, or, start promoting products, start creating content, what would you tell yourself to do, either different or double down on maybe something right that you did, for anybody that's like just starting out with creating content?
That's a good one. So a big one would be really think through, and this one's tough. Try to paint a picture of who you want to be in like 3 or 4 years. I was operating off of really the present. I was not doing a whole lot of like dreaming about like, what kind of content creator do I want to be? Like I had no goals of like ever training SF units or going to brag, or like those weren't goals of mine. I was just in the present, just sort of chipping away. And there are some things that I probably could have planned better for myself. Like, hey, I want to be known as, this kind of person. Like I shoot matches, I get out there and I do XYZ. And then it's probably a 3-year thing establishing that. And so you have to start working on it now. And I didn't really have a plan for how I was going to evolve into a public figure. I also didn't know it was going to happen. Like I was just like putting out content, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, people are asking me for life. Like I remember I was getting questions about like relationship advice. And I remember I was like, I've never even been in one. Like
that's funny.
I'm like 24, 25, haven't had a relationship yet, or 24 at the time, I guess. And I'm like, I'm getting relationship advice questions. Like, what the heck? So some of that I couldn't have foreseen, like for sure. For sure. But I do think for a lot of content creators, one thing I've seen other people struggle with, I did not have this problem, is they have not determined their value, their self-worth. They sell themselves for no money, practically, for trinkets, free guns, free items, free whatever. And you're going to pay for that in the future, because that's how people are going to view you. Now, I didn't have this problem because I had a business. I already knew I didn't want to play that game. My opinion's not for sale. Like I'm going to do business this way. But I've seen a lot of content creators not establish what their boundaries are for how they present themselves as a creator, how they present themselves as a public figure. And it leads a lot of people to making mistakes where they take contracts that are bad. They work with companies that don't align. They take money they probably shouldn't have. And that was less of an issue for me, but I saw it happening a lot with a lot of people I knew. And I've been offered a lot of money to shoot guns. I had one gun company offer me 120 grand a year to shoot their rifles exclusively. And that's one company. Like if I maxed out all the shilling that I could do, like say back in 2021, let's say, like, at the height of everything blowing up, I probably could have been making an extra $300K a year, $400K a year in sponsorships, taking whatever I can get. But you sell a big piece of you when you do that. And if your brand is, operating in a completely different way, you're just shooting yourself in the foot further down the road. There's a way to shill properly and well and productively. There's a way to be paid for services rendered to a business. Most content creators, in my opinion, don't do it very well, and they're not valuing their reputation enough, and they'll do anything for a quick buck. And it's sad to see, but that is one of the double-edged swords to the internet. And a lot of people just haven't prepared themselves mentally to know how to handle that challenge when it shows up right in front of them.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's one too that you can apply not just to content creation, but like business in general. Like, what are your values? Who do you want to be? What are you going to stand for? Where are you going? Like those sorts of things. This is what I hear from you, right?
Yep.
In your own words. So that's really good. For those that do have that established, you'd mentioned there's a like a right way to do it, right? Mm-hmm. What, in your opinion, what is like the right way? Like how do you go about leveraging that?
I think there's two directions you can go. And this is, if I did this, like starting tomorrow, I started a new YouTube channel and I said, hey, we're accepting money from companies to do things. One is you do third-party testing, which lots of consumer electronics people do. It's like, we will test the product. We have some parameters we're going to test it to, and we're going to publish the results for better or worse for your product. And in the process of us doing this, we're going to charge $10,000 to $20,000 because it's our time. We've got to edit the video, put it out to our followers. That's one way of doing it. That is, you're providing a service, and you're a service just like any other business. It just happens to be tied to a YouTube channel or some other content. The other way is consulting. Now, both of these ways, this is what people don't like. They assume that you already have competency and some sort of following. And that is true. You probably need to have some following for people to trust your reviews on content. Or if you're a consultant, you got to have companies that trust that you know what you're talking about. And this is what people don't like to hear. Most content creators out there have not put in the time on the subject they're talking about to be a useful resource. Now, the question is, well, how do you start just producing content if you're learning and it's part of your journey? And the answer is you document the journey. It's not from the standpoint of, I'm the expert, I know all things. It'd be like if I tried to start my business channel in 2014, been like, I've been a business owner, I've been in business now for a year. I'm like, no, it's like, no, dude, that's not how it works. But if I started a channel in 2014 going, hey, I have this small holster company, I'm going to show you guys a day in the life of running this company for the next 10 years. Follow along. Let's check this stuff out. That's above board. It's going to keep you out of trouble. Nobody's going to claim that you're, putting yourself on a pedestal. You're just taking them through the journey. And that's effectively what I was doing with my shooting content early on. Now I have enough experience that I can just produce a video and be like, hey, this is how it is. This is how this product is. The shooting technique is, I've done it enough. I have enough time in. I've shot 500,000 rounds. Like, I actually now know what I'm talking about. Yeah. But a lot of content creators think that they have to pose as an expert immediately in order to be taken seriously. And they'll get into more trouble doing that than they realize. So consulting for money for companies and doing content at the same time, and consumer reviews, I think, are the two most safe ways of producing content for money. It keeps you out of trouble, keeps your followers engaged and not questioning your value as a person, your reputation, and your brand. But most people don't want to put in the work of, spending 6 years doing consumer reviews that they pay for themselves before they can start charging 20 grand to a company, because that's what it would take. Or documenting their journey for 5 years or 6 years before doing educational content on that particular subject. Most people don't want to invest the time in that while working a day job. They think they can just go be a full-time YouTuber in year one. And it's like, Maybe, usually not. And if you're going to do it the shill route, because you have to make money immediately, it's probably not going to work in the long run. So, and I've seen this multiple times. So go down this exact way.
For sure. Yeah, I don't doubt it. That makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. Well, Lucas, you had mentioned earlier a couple times some new business on the horizon and new ventures. Can you share a little bit of what's next for you and where you're headed?
Yeah. So I will share on this podcast for the first time.
I love it.
What the new business is that I'm working on. This is from the philosophy of I have no trouble sharing what I'm working on. Like, I'm a big proponent of transparency. Not that anyone's entitled to it, but just I like sharing a lot of what's going on, because I also understand that even if I give someone the exact playbook for what I'm about to start, most people do not have the work ethic or the creativity to make it happen. So like, I can tell them I'm starting this company, and if someone tries to copy it, it won't be the same. So I don't care. I'm not threatened by it. So the company I've been working on for the last 8 months, again, a lot of market research and planning, is a men's apparel company. There's a piece of the market that I've identified that is unoccupied. For better or worse, I don't know yet. It's a risk, but I like taking risks, that I want to go occupy with some clothing. It's most likely American made, but I'm still sussing that out. It's doable. It's just expensive and fun. But I like America. So like, I'm trying as hard as I can to keep it in America. But yeah, so that's one company. It's a lot of third party ordering and design. A lot of the designs that I'm doing myself, and then working with some very competent people that my wife actually found that we're working with. So that brand may launch this year. It depends on a few things we have going on. I'd like it to launch this year. That's one company. There's another company I won't get into quite yet, because again, it kind of depends on what happens with some stuff right now. And then the third is I want to start a video game company. And that's going to require between 4 and 5 million to get started. But I have a vision for a video game studio that produces unique, it's going to sound really weird, but unique gaming experiences that do not exist in the market right now. And what I mean by that is a lot of video game companies right now, are trying to create a game that people play for the most amount of hours possible, like maximum replay value, lots of microtransactions because cost of goods is practically zero, and it's just free money. Like, it's pretty awesome. The downside is the video game consumer market, a lot of them do not like that model anymore. And they're moving away from supporting that model. And they want just a game they can buy, play for a couple days, and move on to the next game, because there's tons of games to choose from now. And so my vision is to have a studio that makes shorter games, but are interesting, interesting gameplay experiences, things you've never seen before. We're not just trying to do the same battle royale combat shooter game over and over, but a unique experience that's probably single player, multiplayer sometimes, $15 to $20. You're only going to play it for like 8 hours and you're done. You got something out of it. It was interesting. The goal is that you think about it that following week. Like, wow, I just like the story was interesting. The element was interesting. The themes were interesting, because there's been a few games I've played in the last 10 years where I thought about them all week after I finished the game. And I love that. I'm like, that's like watching a good movie, and being like, you're still thinking about the plot and the ending, and you're like that's the goal, is creating games that provide that experience to people, because I think that is lacking in the market right now. So I have a couple ideas for some games that could provide that, but developing costs a lot of money. Devs are quite expensive, and it's the kind of a project where you dump 3 years into it, 4 years into it before there's any return. So it's a gamble. Like, it is a risk to go and make a game, hope that it sells, put it on Steam, and then you hope how it does. But yeah, in the next 10 years, I hope to start that. I've had some interest from some other people, and I may go find investors for that. But there's definitely a market there for people to get into if they have good ideas and they understand the market and the customer. And I think I'm pretty good at figuring that out. So I'm confident I can figure out how to make a video game that tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of people want to play, and then make the second one. On top of that, so while doing all of this and still doing T-Rex, I'm also starting a business YouTube channel where I focus on business concepts that I've learned the last 11 years. There's going to be a lot on handling online fame and online presence and creating content and communication, different things that tips that I've learned. It's going to be a small channel because not a lot of people, it's either going to be huge because people love to hear, how to get rich or be successful or whatever. Right. Or it's going to be tiny because it's going to be super niche. And I'm happy with either.
Right.
I've already made a big channel before. I don't have to do it again.
Sure.
I just want to talk to the people that need the stuff. If it's 10,000 people, it's 10,000 people. If it's 100,000 people, it's 100,000 people. I don't care. So I should be filming. I was supposed to film the first video last month and missed that deadline. I should be filming it this month and then just starting to put out videos on that channel. It's just Lucas Botkin. It's on YouTube. I think you can find it already. And we'll start putting some stuff there. And if it helps people, cool. If it doesn't, well, sucks for them, I guess, who are watching it. And so, yeah, I've got 4 or 5 things going on right now. And
yeah, for sure. A lot of good stuff, though. Man, I love it. Awesome, Lucas. Well, you had mentioned the YouTube channel. You said at Lucas Botkin on YouTube. Where can listeners connect with you on Instagram? Tell us about all your places to connect.
Yeah, I've got Twitter, also Lucas Botkin. Instagram's Lucas T-Rex Arms, all one word. And then the big YouTube is the T-Rex Arms YouTube. And I think we're at 1.7 or 1.8, something like that, subs. And so we're still producing lots of gun content. I filmed, we've got 3 videos that I filmed all coming out over the next 3 weeks. And we've got a fun one launching this Saturday. We're trying to break some Trigicon optics. And so that was fun.
Oh, nice.
I won't spoil it. So that's going up this Saturday. So yeah, okay. We're kind of all over. I mean, if people Google me, they can find those places and find Reddit and all kinds of fun stories about me that never happened. Yeah.
I love it. Cool. Well, awesome, Lucas. Well, hey, I appreciate you coming on and sharing everything that you've shared with us. Man, tons of value there. Man, for our listeners, go check out Lucas. Go check out his T-Rex Arms channel, his YouTube channel. And until next time, peace.